Guerilla Scholarship. This is an exciting episode today featuring Dr. Sheldon Greaves. We know that Falling for Learning podcast is all about the lifelong pursuit of learning, loving to learn, and falling in love with learning, the process of learning. And so Dr. Sheldon Greaves actually lives the actual tenets of that. And he's going to tell us more about his life and his lifelong learning pursuit. Hi, thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. We have this podcast to help parents and caregivers with having the resources, strategies, and tools needed to make sure that their children are on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Thank you, Dr. Sheldon, for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So can you tell us what was that thing that made you fall in love with learning as a youngster?
Well, like a lot of things, a lot of people like to do, I blame my parents. My folks were both college educated. My mother had she studied English in college, but she also took a lot of language study, and in fact, she could get along in 4 different languages. English, German, French, Italian, and Latin too. She knew that as well. And growing up, I was just kind of exposed to this. So when I got into first grade, I was astonished that not everybody's mom knew Latin. I mean, that just seemed like, normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
My father had traveled fairly extensively in Europe and the Middle East in his younger years. He spoke fluent French. And although he wasn't a professor or anything, both of them were very curious about the world. My mother was also very active in the local Friends of the Public Library.
Okay.
And the library sort of doubled as daycare for us, the public library. So we were always either being dumped in the midst of books or books were being dumped on us. We also had some wonderful things. Public broadcasting was kind of a new concept back then.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, in fact, in grade school, someone wheeled in a television and a video machine and said, "We want to test market this new show for kids. It's called Sesame Street.
Okay.
Tell us what you think." The other thing, too, is that 1958, the Congress passed a bill called the Defense and Education Act, and it was signed by President Eisenhower. And this was a response to the launch of Sputnik, the Russian satellite. I mean, we had all been told that Russians were either alcoholic factory workers or semi-literate tundra farmers with bilateral frostbite,
Right.
and could never possibly do anything like this until they did.
And they beat the Americans.
They
so it's
beat
like,
the
we got to get
Americans.
we got to get these kids in gear. This next generation has to be much better.
Exactly. And funding poured out like a river. The kind of funding that was normally available for the Pentagon was suddenly available for public schools. Now, 58, that was the year I was born. And by the time I got to first grade, all those lovely, lovely tools were there at school waiting for me. So we had all this wonderful multimedia stuff and movies and film strips and then later video, and a lot of the early technology was kind of being tried out. Teachers were getting paid a decent wage. They were enthusiastic. They were encouraged to be experimental and innovative, and they were. And being smart and nerdy was kind of patriotic.
So can you tell us what are some of those tools? We know money is pouring out, but what specifically are those tools that you got because of this race to space?
Well, I developed an appreciation for the public library. Not
Okay.
just the fact that they had books, but that they had people there who could show you all the nifty tips and tricks that you don't normally see. Like I discovered that I could call the library, the downtown, and say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on a report on the Philippines. Can
Okay.
you help me? And they said, sure. And they'd send out half a dozen books on the Philippines with the bookmobile that showed up the
Oh,
following Saturday.
so
I
we
just
have the
went down.
bookmobile.
Yeah, picked
Okay.
them up, you know. The other thing that I learned was that there are a lot of people around that seem like ordinary folks that often know things that you wouldn't expect.
Okay.
It turns out so and so was a retired engineer. So and so over here was a school teacher that knows all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't have imagined.
So this is
Uh,
at the public library. They're possibly paying people to go and help and be like information agents.
well, there was part of that, but it was also just the people in the neighborhood.
Okay.
For example, I'm sitting there looking at a picture of a Greek temple, and my mom comes over and explains the three orders of architecture, Doric, Ionic,
Yes.
Corinthian, and I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, mom, really? And then,
So what I think is really important for us to highlight
mhm,
is that it sounds like you had a lot of access to things.
yes,
But what I hear is, some of it, of course, is, we don't all have access to parents who are like maybe highly educated, depending on
right,
who we are.
hmm
But I hear the library, I hear public broadcasting, which is still free for now, hopefully. And so these are things that we really need to still take advantage of, and it doesn't. And so I may have grown up like on the lower,
hmm
more less money, right?
sure,
Less access there, but I was a library kid,
hmm
that was one of my secondary babysitters as well, so I definitely can relate. And I definitely was, and I thought I was an original PBS kid, but it sounds like in the 1950s they had PBS kids as well.
yeah, yeah. There were some wonderful shows. I mean, it was all kind of um, I don't know what the word is, a little amateurish maybe, but they got the job
Yeah.
done. They were
Yeah.
neat
And I
kids.
did realize that later on when I was watching Mr. Rogers, that
hmm
Mr. Rogers had long retired or whatever. I didn't know, but I was watching him
hmm
when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
They even have like a new iteration, like Daniel's Tiger or something like that is an
Oh,
iteration
oh, I haven't
of,
heard about that, but that's great
yes, because
news.
it's his like little puppets and
Uh
stuff
huh.
like that, or like a little cartoon, but it's
Ah.
like still like it's like a remnant of Mr.
hmm
Rogers' Neighborhood.
Okay.
So, but those
hmm
things are free that we can give
Yeah.
access to our children. And it doesn't even matter income level. We can
No,
go
it
and take our
doesn't.
kids to the library. We could take them. We could focus in on letting them see some public television and all that. So that's something I had
Yeah.
access to as well. So
Yeah. And it's amazing what you could do when you don't have a lot of money. I mean, for most of my growing up, like my dad was a chimney sweep, for God's sake.
mm,
Despite he had this talent for getting into a field just before the bottom would fall out of it.
okay.
But he finally found got this chimney sweeping business, and that carried him through until he decided he was too old to do that. Then he went
Okay.
and got his master's in social work, which was kind of cool because he got his master's degree the same year I got mine. So that was fun. But the other thing too is that um, if parents display curiosity, genuine curiosity, the kids pick up on that.
Yeah.
So there's an example in my book. I've just recently published a book about all this um, called the Guerilla Scholar's Handbook.
Can you
But
hold it up for us? Do you have
yeah,
it with
I
you?
have a copy
Hold
here.
it up, Sheldon.
Yes, there it
Dr.
is.
Dr.
Backward.
Greaves, okay?
Oh, you can
The
call me Sheldon.
Gorillas,
Absolutely.
the Gorilla Scholar's Handbook. Love
Mm-hmm.
it. Okay.
Yes,
So
it is.
this pursuit of knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
curiosity that you saw your parents doing, that you were
Mm-hmm.
emulating somewhat, it later on led to you becoming a guerrilla scholar. So let's get into what that is, because you coined this term, right?
Uh-huh.
Tell us what it is.
Guerrilla scholarship is doing intellectual work by using creative and unconventional approaches to finding things out and working with information. So here's an example of guerrilla scholarship. There was this guy. He was a lawyer, and he used to find, see articles and stuff on the web, and he would make printouts of them and bring them home to his kids because he thought they might be interested in them. Mm-hmm. And there was one that he brought home by a guy, a scholar named Richard Jensen, and it was about Irish immigrants. And Jensen's paper claimed that this whole thing about no Irish need apply was actually a myth, that it didn't really happen. Well, his daughter, Rebecca Freed was her name. She was an 8th grader, and she sees this paper and she thinks, that seems weird. So she goes onto Google Image and she starts looking, and she starts finding all these period pictures with signs in the window that say no Irish need apply. It's kind of like, So she starts gathering more and more stuff, and then this is where it really becomes important. She contacted another scholar, a retired scholar, who disagreed with Jensen's thesis, and she showed him her stuff, and she says, have I got something here? And he looked at it and he goes, yeah. So what he did was he helped Rebecca take her material and craft it into a paper that could be submitted for peer review.
Wonderful.
And it was actually printed in the same journal that Jensen's paper was printed in, and kind of pretty much, knocked his thesis down several notches. So that's one example. It's unusual, but it is possible.
That's really, really important to highlight for parents, like helping kids to see how what they learn can be used to help empower them, right? We're in an age with over information, and not all of it is true. And how do you sort it out? And, that ability to read and to think, critical thinking, curiosity, research, all of that can help, bolster your child. We know that a lot of kids like to argue, and we can help them to turn that into a tool for advancement for themselves and advancement for their community. And we know that a lot of misinformation about history is, they want to silence certain people's history, say that it didn't happen, say that it's not important or whatever. And here she was able to stand up and show the proof and actually, advocate for herself and her community. Well, I don't know. Was she Irish? Yes, right?
No, she just a curious 8th grader.
Well, so not her own community, but just proving misinformation, and obviously somebody's community, where people are trying to, kind of eliminate or erase something that they have gone through, their ancestors or family members.
Yeah, I have an entire chapter dedicated to this whole problem of disinformation. With a nod to Harry Potter, the title of the chapter is Defense Against the Dark Arts. So,
that's some scary stuff. It is when
really
when
scary.
I could tell you that your family's atrocities or whatever is not that important, didn't happen, or nope, it's not important, didn't happen. It's a big issue.
It is a big issue, and another big problem is that you get so many conflicting ideas and opinions and whatever.
Yes.
That you reach a point where you decide you can't possibly know what's real.
Yeah.
It's
and for the people who are not, as we get further and further away from the history, and we know history repeats itself, especially we didn't learn those lessons, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we talk a little bit about that and about how information bubbles happen and about how you can take a look and vet sources
Yes.
and kind of develop your own network. One of the weirder twists in my career was while I was in graduate school, I got mugged one night, and
Mm.
that set me on a path to learn how to protect myself. Well, one thing led to another, and I found myself at this school that was intended to, or was for training high threat level bodyguards.
Okay.
And I liked their approach to martial arts because they didn't teach it as a sport. They taught it as a job skill.
I see.
Yeah. And one day, the head of the school, he found out that I had an advanced degree. He takes me into his office. He says, "Hey, listen, I've got this idea. I want to take this little school and I want to turn it into an actual university."
I
And
heard that.
yeah, and that would cover not just protection but intelligence and counterterrorism. How would you like to co-found a university with me? And I'm kind of like, yeah. We started with practically nothing, but we eventually did end up, creating what became Henley Putnam University, which was the first university to do something like that. And so I learned the craft of intelligence from professionals. And why that's important is that the intelligence analyst always has to be aware that someone is trying to deceive them. Someone is always throwing falsehoods at you, kind of like where all of us are now.
Yeah, that's an important thing to think about early on.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to say, as a youngster, I was more like just believing a lot of things, right? You pick up the book, you read the book, that book is true. And that is a dangerous place to be, especially now, And of course, it's maybe not be a book. It might be Instagram. Like I saw, and I hear sometimes people who are just, little kids or whatever, or people who are just not informed. They're just like, yeah, I saw it on the internet. And it's like, well, that's not an actual source. I mean, like which website, which, video, who did that video? What was their positionality? But it's something because parents also have less control over what their kids see and hear. The Rewrite Method and the Rewrite Method Workbook are your go-to resource for helping kids to learn to fall in love with writing. It has the tips, tools, resources, strategies, and skill-building activities to help kids fall out of writing hate and into loving to write. Get your book set today. And, we were reflecting on this before on the podcast, before, you turned on that one radio or thing and we're all listening to the same music. You grow up with the music of your mom, your dad. And now it's like, I have my device. My mom has her device. My dad has his device. My sister has, so we're not listening to the same music. That algorithm is shaping, like what I'm interested in. And I may not know what my mom's music is, right? Or we're all sitting down and watching the television show together.
Yeah.
Now everybody has their own little device, their own show that they could watch. And it's like, I don't know what show you're talking about. Never seen it, And so we are not, so that means all the not video games, but video games obviously have some control, but also like the commercials, the messages that you're getting are so different for the kids than they are for the adults. And so they need their own critical eye because they're seeing so much that we aren't able to say, look at that silly commercial about the Cocoa Krispies. Cocoa Krispies are not really good. You know, when we were kids, our parents could say Cocoa Krispies are not good for you. It's not. Notice they said nutritious breakfast. They're not saying it's healthy. You know, even though nutritious, people think, oh, sounds like healthy. Like, no, not healthy.
No.
So, but we don't even know what the commercial to warn our kids about now, to be like, that's not okay. We don't know what they've seen. And then, you know, we know videos just pop up, you know, and maybe they were watching this show, but then something else pops up, something's on the site that they click on. And so it's so good for them it's so important for them to have their own critical thinking, their own critical eye, their media literacy, right? You know, be able to be critical of those messages that are hitting them from all points, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The billboards, even, I'm like, should all kids be able to see this billboard? You know, like, it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, you touch on another really important point, and that was that we were doing this together. And we don't do that anymore. But that's one of the things that I stress a lot when I talk about guerrilla scholarship is it's best done communally. You know, form a reading group, form a salon, get a few people together, for heaven's sake. You know, the perfect university could be two people sitting on either end of a very short log discussing passionately something, you know.
Yeah. I just want to back up. You use the term salon. And while I know what you're talking about, maybe some of our audience members, you know, is it where you get your hair done? What are you referring to? No.
Fair point. Yeah. Back in the day, and this is like going back to the 18th century, the salon, actually, come to think of it, no, this goes back to Roman times. Someone who had, you know, a house, some space, and usually some money, would bring together interesting people and set a topic of discussion, and then the people would discuss it. And people would come either to participate or to watch. And they would kind of have these freewheeling debates, and people would be selected, you know, based on their knowledge or based on their wit or, you know, whatever. And in many cases, some of the really important ideas in Western politics were actually kind of thrashed out in these salons, mostly in Paris and other parts of France. And actually, in fact, there's a section in my book that talks about, in America, about antebellum African-American literary societies and salons. Yeah, where they were figuring out the whole abolition thing and how are they going to do this, and using these salons as a vehicle for teaching reading and literacy and political understanding. And a lot of the ideas that underpinned the American Revolution and the French Revolution were formed in the salons of Paris. A lot of, as you say, abolitionist ideas were formed in these African-American antebellum societies. They're just really important. After World War I, they kind of fell out of fashion, but there were a couple that came back. There was one in the 1920s. It was called the House of Truth. And it involved some low-level functionaries, government functionaries in Washington, D.C., but they managed, I mean, just about everybody who was anybody ended up passing through that salon. I mean, you know, like Judge Brandeis and all these other people, including the guy, one of the founding members, and I can't remember his name, but he was the sculptor who conceived and carved Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
That guy, you know.
That's interesting. That's something that people should bring back, it sounds like. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking like podcasts are a new salon then, right? Because people are just like discussing their ideas, and there's definitely groups of people. Sometimes there's just two. Sometimes there's just one. But it gets discussion going, right? About different things happening in our society. So maybe that's our new salon.
It could
Welcome
be.
to the Falling for Learning Salon, guys. No.
There you go. Brilliant. I love it.
All right. So you can you tell us about your educational journey? Like, where did you go? Where did you study? What were the subjects you were studying? Let's learn more about this Guerilla scholarship in action.
Right. Well, now I have to make a disclaimer here at first, because when I started college, it was actually possible to get through college without, having to put your left kidney in hock in order to pay for it all,
Okay, so tell us what it was though. Like, what were what school and what what was that tuition like, right?
Right. So I had my first undergraduate school was a little college called Rick's College in Idaho, and I went there to study theater because they had a good theater department, and I was very much into that sort of thing. And I also had done a little bit of broadcasting work. Actually, my summer job before I went to college, I was a disc jockey at a radio station. So I did that for a while. Decided, okay, that it's interesting, but I'm not sure that there's really a future there. I spent some time to travel abroad, spent some time in Europe, just basically wandering around, picked up some of the language there. I came back and decided I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I actually managed to get, I got a scholarship at BYU in Utah.
Okay.
And I started out in earth science and kind of got sidetracked because of all the subjects that I study, math is kind of my white whale, and I had this class that I had to take. It was intermediate algebra. I studied like mad for it, like crazy, spent hours and hours on it and got a C, and something snapped. I dropped out of the university. I went back to my hometown of Salem, Oregon, and I went to the community college there, and I took math classes just to demonstrate to myself whether I really was just math stupid or not. And I got far enough to say, okay, I can manage this. Then I went back and back to BYU, and I decided I'd become very fascinated with the ancient Near East, what we call the Middle East today.
Okay.
And so I decided, okay, I can do the math, but I'm better with languages, because that field is very language heavy. Yes. So I started doing that. Got to the end of my bachelor's degree in Near Eastern Studies. That's about the time I met my spouse. We met in the library, and there was this cute blonde in the corner reading Aristotle in Greek like it was a newspaper, and I'm like, I want to get to know her.
A meeting of the minds.
A meeting of the minds. Yep. And it's been 41 years, and we're still together.
Wow.
So she was a classicist. She did she also had a degree in music, but we decided to get married. The one issue was I needed to get a master's degree in order to pursue a doctorate. She already had her master's; she had just finished it, and she'd been accepted with a full scholarship to Stanford.
Right.
Now, Stanford said, well, look, we can hold it off for a year. And so I went to my advisor and I said, Dave, his name was Dave Montgomery. I said, Dave, you got to help me. I need to get a 2-year master's degree in 1 year. Can we do it? And he says, well, we'll figure out a way to do it. So we did that. Then I got accepted at Berkeley. So we both were at least in the same city. And we
rival schools.
Oh, they are rival schools. I know. It was endless fun. I would wear a Stanford sweatshirt at Berkeley, and she'd wear a Berkeley sweatshirt at Stanford, and just piss people off. But this is kind of where some of the guerrilla stuff comes in, because we were living in very close to Stanford campus, and I found a way to get into the Stanford library because I didn't want to make the hour, 45-minute commute if I needed to use the library up there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I also discovered that a lot of the things that I needed were in a library that belonged to a local Catholic seminary in Menlo Park that most people didn't even know was there. I got to know the librarian there. He was a hoot. He was a ordained Southern Baptist minister who was the librarian at a Catholic library, Catholic seminary. I don't know how that happened, but he was great. He was a lot of help. The other problem too was that it's expensive living in the Bay Area, and
even back then,
it was starting to get kind of pricey. And so what we would have to do is after her scholarship ran out, we would trade off. She would go to school and I would work. And then after the end of that year, I would go to school and she would work. And we would just kind of take these financial leaves of absence.
Teamwork. Wow.
Yeah. But in the meantime, if I was working and not going to school, I still needed to find ways to keep going on my studies.
Right.
And that meant that I had to either approach professors directly and say, kind of off the book, so to speak, and say, what can you do? Help me. Talk to other students, find other ways to research certain things. The internet was just kind of becoming a thing. When I started my doctoral program, there was no such thing as the World Wide Web. It hadn't been invented yet. And in fact, Stanford still had their card catalog in their library.
Right.
And they were just starting to replace it with an electronic catalog that we could access on our little Macintosh through a 300 baud modem. That was all very, war games and stuff. So you have to get creative about how you get information and how you keep track of it. Another thing that I learned was how to apply the used book market. Because sometimes there was a book I needed and I couldn't find it, or the library had it, but I couldn't check it out because I didn't have a current card. So I'd have to find some way either to buy it or to get it through the public library. And I discovered that the public library has all kinds of stuff that most people have no idea is even there. But if you go and talk to the reference librarian, my God, it's just like, wow, where did all this come from? Another thing I came to discover was government documents. The U.S. government is the largest publisher of English language materials in the world. There's something like 8,000 new titles that come out every month, and they're about everything. Just everything. Now, that might not be as true now as it was before, certainly not then, but by law, every congressional district has to have at least one government documents repository, and each repository has to have people who know how to find stuff. And very often you can go to a government document source and talk to someone there, and they can put you in, find stuff for you. Or the government also keeps an index of experts, government experts. You can say, I need to find an expert on, I don't know, spotted owls or something. And they can look in this thing and say, well, there's this wildlife biologist in the department of such and such, and she knows everything about it. Here's her phone number, Oh
my goodness.
So there's just
that's some new information.
Yeah.
It sounds like your book is just full of amazing strategies, resources, and that's what we're all about here on the Falling for Learning podcast.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This can keep you busy for a long time.
So where can we get your book?
It is available on Amazon at the moment. It's available in hardcover, softcover, ebook, and audiobook. The audiobook is available from 6 different platforms.
Excellent.
they've gotten that one out there pretty quick. You can also find it through bookfinder.com.
Okay.
There will be other things coming on online soon, or so I'm told. The thing just was published on June 25th, so it hasn't been out that long.
Great. All right. And can you tell us what your doctoral degree is in?
My doctoral degree is in ancient Near Eastern studies. My primary area of emphasis is the Hebrew Bible, or the
Oh,
Old Testament.
okay.
Old Testament. So,
Okay. Well, that's amazing. I am so glad that you joined us today on the Falling for Learning podcast. Are there any final things that you could talk to parents about that really helped you to develop as a learner?
what really has kind of stuck with me is that learning is fun. It is a pleasure. If you're not enjoying it, you're not learning. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's a quote from T.H. White's book, The Once and Future King, about King Arthur and all this, and it's Merlin talking to Arthur, and he's I guess Arthur's having a rough day or something, and Merlin says, the best thing for being sad is to learn something. That is the only thing that never fails. And that has just stuck with me. Too much of what we try to learn is about getting a job or getting prestige or something like that. Forget all that. Learning is fun, doggone it. There's so much fun to be had, and I worry that we're missing that.
That is awesome advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Sheldon Greaves, for joining us. And for all of the listeners and viewers out there, please do something today that's going to give your child the competitive advantage. Please like and subscribe. Have a great week. Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning, or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.